Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know many of you are facing challenges with the snow and ice out there, and I think we just faced our own little technical difficulty that we've now overcome. So thank you so much for joining us for the Innov8te webinar. We are excited to introduce the 8th edition neonatal resuscitation program. I'm Dr. Jana Patterson. I'm a neonatologist by training and also a senior vice president at the American Academy of Pediatrics. In June of 2020, AAP and RQI partners entered into a strategic relationship to improve neonatal resuscitation, education, and training globally. The 8th edition of NRP contains the first efforts of this collaboration. Today's sessions will provide you with information to learn and plan for the implementation of the 8th edition NRP curricula. Session 1 provides updates on the NRP program related to the science and educational format for all of those people involved in NRP. Session 2 will present specific information for NRP instructors and administrators. Session 3 will be an introduction to a new educational modality for the program, RQI for NRP. Our first session has two people known and I dare say loved throughout the NRP community, Jeanette Zeichkin and Dr. Gary Weiner. Jeanette taught me NRP many years ago and has worked as both a staff nurse and a clinical nurse specialist in level 2 and 3 nurseries for more than 30 years. Jeanette has been a consultant to the NRP Steering Committee since 1998 and serves as editor of the NRP Instructor Toolkit and associate editor of the textbook of neonatal resuscitation 8th edition. Dr. Gary Weiner is a clinical associate professor in the Department of Pediatrics and a practicing neonatologist at the University of Michigan's Mott Children's Hospital in Ann Arbor, Michigan. He is a member of the International Liaison Committee on Resuscitation's Neonatal Life Support Task Force and the American Heart Association's Resuscitation Guidelines Writing Group. Dr. Weiner is the editor of the textbook of neonatal resuscitation 8th edition and serves as a consultant on the NRP Steering Committee. But before I hand it over to Jeanette and Gary, I'd like you to know that due to the large number of registrants, we're unable to include a live Q&A, but we've set up this separate Q&A website listed here where you can submit questions which will be posted as they're answered, and which will keep live until the end of the year to provide ongoing support and visibility for everyone. Today's presentation includes links to additional content. While you're welcome to screen capture this information, the links will also be posted on the Q&A website. So please take a moment to record this address that you see here, rqipartners.com/NRP-QA. For those of you who could not attend live today, we're recording a session. The link to the recording will be posted on this YouTube channel you are viewing from and on the Q&A website. Additionally, you can find the link at aap.com/NRP, in the Instructor Toolkit, and at rqipartners.com/NRP. And with all of that, I'm going to now turn it over to Gary to get us started. Over to you, Gary.
Okay, thanks, Jana. It's great to be here with so many NRP providers and instructors, and thanks everybody for hanging on through technical trouble, and we hope everybody's getting along okay with power issues and snow. We're really excited to be launching NRP 8th edition in June of this year. At that point, providers and instructors who choose to may start using NRP 8th edition materials immediately or continue using 7th edition materials through the end of 2021. However, NRP 8th edition materials must be implemented by January 1st, 2022. We do want to be clear that current NRP providers don't need to complete an 8th edition course by that time. NRP providers may keep their current renewal date. The only reason providers would take an 8th edition course prior to their current renewal date is if their institution decides to make an 8th edition course an institutional requirement. Jeanette Zeichkin will talk more about how instructors can help NRP providers make the transition to the NRP 8th edition in the second portion of this webinar. Okay, so here is a quick overview of what's new in the NRP 8th edition. First, the textbook's been updated with some new features to make it more reader-friendly, and there are a small number of practice changes based on new science and to improve educational efficiency, and we'll discuss those in just a moment. In response to requests from providers and instructors, the 8th edition introduces 2 levels of learning, NRP Essentials and NRP Advanced. And then to help guide instructors, NRP 8th edition describes 2 potential formats for traditional instructor-led provider courses. Also, NRP 8th edition introduces a new collaboration with RQI that makes NRP available to hospitals that use the RQI self-directed educational system for their resuscitation education. And then finally, the 8th edition will use a new electronic learning management system, or LMS, that will replace HealthStream. It's called the NRP Learning Platform and will be used by hospitals that have traditional instructor-led courses. Got a next slide coming? I think so. Okay, well, I'm going to continue. So, of course, the 8th edition of NRP is based on resuscitation science, and the science starts with ILCOR. ILCOR stands for the International Liaison Committee on Resuscitation, and it's a consortium of experts representing 7 resuscitation councils from around the world that works to rigorously evaluate the current state of resuscitation science and publish detailed consensus statements. These consensus statements are called COSTARs, and they used to be published every 5 years, but now they're published online continuously as new science evolves. This fall, a summary of recent COSTAR statements was published in the journals Circulation and Resuscitation, and you can anticipate that similar summaries will appear annually, likely in the fall. If you'd like to learn more about the ILCOR process, the Neonatal Task Force chairs created a YouTube video that you can watch, and the link to that video will be available on the QA website that Janet described. Okay, our next slide. Since the fall of 2019, this is a summary of the topics that have been addressed in COSTARs by the Neonatal ILCOR Task Force. Additional consensus statements are about to be released, likely this spring and summer. And as new statements are released, they become the scientific basis for resuscitation guidelines. After the ILCOR consensus is completed, each council determines how the science can be applied within their own context. In the United States, the American Heart Association is our representative council, and in cooperation with the AAP, the American Heart Association develops resuscitation guidelines that apply the ILCOR scientific consensus to the resuscitation of newborns in the United States. Finally, the NRP uses these guidelines to develop educational materials that put it all into practice, actually in the delivery room. Revised guidelines were published in Pediatrics and Circulation in October 2020 and will inform the 8th edition materials. And NRP instructors should have received an email notice and a link when they were released. The link is also available on the Q&A website. So now let's review the 8th edition practice changes. First, establishing a plan for umbilical cord management, whether there'll be an immediate or delayed cord clamping plan, has been added to the 4 pre-birth questions. And this question replaces how many babies are expected. And although this is still important information to know, we anticipate it'll be covered by the question, are there additional risk factors? Next, the initial steps have been reordered to better reflect common practice. So in the 8th edition, the initial steps are described as warm, dry, stimulate, position airway, and suction if needed. In the 8th edition, an electronic cardiac monitor is recommended earlier in the algorithm. And while an electronic cardiac monitor may be considered even earlier, we recommend that a cardiac monitor should be used to assess the baby's heart rate once an alternative airway becomes necessary. Then for educational efficiency, the suggested intravenous and intraosseous epinephrine doses have been simplified. The suggested initial IVIO dose is 0.02 milligrams per kilogram, which is 0.2 milliliters per kilogram. And for endotracheal administration, the simplified dose is 0.1 milligrams per kilogram, or 1 milliliter per kilogram. The full recommended range has not changed. These simplified doses don't represent an endorsement of any particular dose within the recommended range, but are suggested as a way to increase educational efficiency, make it easier to prepare doses for small babies, and potentially improve teamwork by allowing the provider that's preparing the dose to know exactly what to expect. In addition, the recommended flush volume has been increased, based on evidence from animal studies suggesting that small flushes, previously 0.5 to 1 ml, may leave epinephrine in the baby's liver rather than allowing it to reach the heart. So the recommended flush volume after an IV or IO epinephrine dose is 3 milliliters of normal saline. And this volume applies to all weights and gestations. Finally, the time frame for considering cessation of resuscitative efforts with an absent heart rate has been expanded from 10 minutes to 20 minutes. And this is based on a review of evidence suggesting that it often takes longer than 10 minutes to perform all appropriate steps, and survival without significant neurodisability is possible despite an absent heart rate at 10 minutes. Of course, the decision to continue resuscitative efforts should be individualized based on patient and contextual factors. So this is the NRP 8th edition algorithm in its entirety. There are really only minor changes from the NRP 7th edition algorithm. The algorithm shown here will appear in the textbook of Nino Resuscitation 8th edition and all accompanying educational materials. And for efficiency, it differs slightly from the algorithm in the AHA guidelines in style and word choice, but it doesn't conflict with the published science. Now, let's take a look at the top and bottom halves of the algorithm so we can see them more clearly. So this is the top half of the algorithm. It reflects the changes we discussed in the terminology used for the initial steps of newborn care. And note also that the vertical line on the left denoting 1 minute, goes to the top of the PPV box. This is to clarify the recommendation that positive pressure ventilation should begin within 60 seconds of birth, but attaching the pulse oximeter and the cardiac monitor, if a monitor is indicated, can follow. Initiating PPV by 1 minute is the priority. Now, this is the bottom half of the algorithm. And you'll see the changes we've already discussed about using a cardiac monitor when an alternative airway is required. And then on the bottom right, the target oxygen saturation table now includes a reminder for the initial oxygen concentration for PPV for babies more than or equal to 35 weeks gestation and less than 35 weeks gestation. Let's talk briefly about the textbook itself. So the 8th edition NRP textbook has a familiar format with an updated appearance and the minor changes we've discussed in the NRP algorithm. Each lesson has new sections with potential quality improvement opportunities, and QR codes have been added to the text to support easy access to short procedural videos. Insertion of a laryngeal mask has been moved to lesson 4 to ensure that all learners are exposed to this device. And then additional material describing the resuscitation of babies with neural tube defects and abdominal wall defects have been added to the special consideration lessons, lesson 10. And finally, the 8th edition textbook offers 3 new supplemental lessons with terrific new material. These lessons are available to all NRP providers to enhance their knowledge. However, there are no test questions about these lessons. The supplemental lessons include improving resuscitation team performance, resuscitation outside the delivery room, and bringing quality improvement to your hospital's NRP. To provide additional details about the levels of learning and course formats, I'm going to hand things over to Jeanette Zeichkin, the editor of the Instructor Toolkit and associate editor of the 8th edition textbook.
Hi, Gary. Thanks a lot. I'm glad we're back on and that everyone could be with us today. Let's talk first about the educational components of the NRP 8th edition, starting with the 2 levels of NRP provider, NRP Essentials and NRP Advanced. There they are. As you may already know, the NRP Steering Committee made the decision to offer 2 course options so that NRP providers could excel in the course material most relevant to their role and personnel resources. So each facility will determine who takes NRP Essentials or NRP Advanced. NRP Essentials is appropriate for anyone who's involved in the care of a newborn, and NRP Advanced is appropriate for anyone who attends births and is responsible for resuscitation of the newborn or participates in neonatal resuscitation beyond positive pressure ventilation. Each organization will decide who should be NRP Essentials providers and who should be NRP Advanced providers. We encourage organizations to write this policy before you begin teaching your NRP 8th edition courses. The decision about which category of provider to become is made by the independent learner or by the learner's employer. The AAP won't deter any NRP learner from taking either course. If you're unsure about which NRP provider category to choose, you should probably choose NRP Advanced. So first, let's talk about NRP Essentials. Everyone's responsible for the material in lessons 1 through 4, but the NRP Essentials learner is responsible only for that material in lessons 1 through 4. And that includes the foundations of neonatal resuscitation, anticipating and preparing, initial steps, and PPV, including laryngeal mask. It also includes material about CPAP administration, but your hospital can decide who's responsible for administering CPAP in the delivery room. NRP Essentials learners may study any additional lessons on their own, but the learner can't take an NRP exam on selected additional lessons. The NRP Advanced learner is responsible for materials in lessons 1 through 11. So the advanced provider covers the lessons through PPV, including laryngeal mask and CPAP, and the additional lessons that you see listed on the screen. NRP advanced learners may study the 3 supplemental lessons, but the NRP doesn't test on those on the material in those 3 lessons. The supplemental lessons are about improving resuscitation team performance, resuscitation outside the delivery room, and bringing quality improvement to your resuscitation team. Most hospitals will continue to use instructor-led provider courses to maintain and attain their learners' provider status, either essentials or advanced. The components of the instructor-led provider course remain the same. These should look familiar to you. They're the cognitive component, that's textbook and the online learning assessment, technical skills, which is the instructor-led portion, and teamwork and communication, which is the simulation and debriefing component. The NRP edition includes no eSIM cases. All providers will complete the online learning assessment. This replaces the NRP exam for lessons 1 through 4. The online learning assessment is a new and innovative interactive learning experience that uses artificial intelligence to tailor the instruction to each person's current level of knowledge and their confidence with this knowledge. So when you sign in to take the learning assessment, you rate yourself as on a sliding scale between expert or beginner. And if you rate yourself an expert, you answer questions correctly, then you don't receive content on the screen unless you miss questions. If you're not an expert in lessons 1 through 4, you'll receive as much content as you need to answer each question correctly. People who know the content will finish fairly quickly. People who don't know the content or miss a lot of questions or are not sure of their answers will take longer to finish. The NRP 8th edition instructor course offers 2 learning formats. The first format is called Sequential Practice and Evaluation. This format works for all NRP learners, but it's well suited to new learners and those who don't often use their delivery room resuscitation skills. So in this format, the learner practices each skill with the instructor until little assistance is needed. Then they use the skill in a short scenario, and those scenarios are provided for you in the textbook if you need them. When the learner can lead their team in correct algorithm sequence and perform their role-relevant skills without coaching, they're ready to move on to the next skill. Each scenario builds on the knowledge and the skills from the previous lessons. In this format, the instructor sees each learner build skills until all the skills can be used in algorithm sequence with correct technique, and at that point, the learner has passed the skills component of NRP. Then they move on to simulation and debriefing, where they focus on teamwork and communication. The second learning format is called Comprehensive Skills Test format, or a more familiar term for this is testing out. Learners who resuscitate newborns frequently and are experts at resuscitation, either the essential skills or the advanced skills, can test out of the sequential practice and evaluation course by leading their team through at least one scenario that tests their knowledge of the algorithm sequence and lets them demonstrate correct technique for their skills. For example, an essentials provider would lead their team through a PPV scenario, and an advanced provider would lead their team through at least one scenario that includes complex resuscitation skills. If the learner makes critical errors or needs coaching, the learner requires remediation and can try again at some point, or should attend a course that uses sequential practice scenarios. Your hospital may not resuscitate babies frequently enough for teams of providers to be experts. You're not required to offer the testing out option. Learners may have more success at testing out of essential skills than advanced skills, and that might be an option for testing out. And remember that learners who test out must still participate in simulation and debriefing. Now let's talk about how learners will achieve provider status at an instructor-led course. These are the courses that you're used to teaching. This is a schematic of how an NRP Essentials learner proceeds through the learning process. So follow along with me. The learner begins by reviewing the textbook lessons, and then within 90 days of completing the online learning assessment, the learner attends an instructor-led provider course, either in the sequential practice format, or if the learner is an expert, they may opt to test out if your program offers that option. After learners finish their skills assessment, they proceed to simulation and debriefing, then they receive their Essentials card. The Essentials provider status is renewed every 2 years. That should look pretty familiar to you. For the advanced learner, they follow pretty much the same track with one exception. After completing the online learning assessment, NRP advanced learners are required to take a 35-question multiple choice exam for lessons 5 through 11. Then within 90 days, the learner attends an instructor-led course with simulation and debriefing and achieves NRP provider status, and that would be renewed every 2 years also. On June 1st, the new NRP learning format will launch for the 8th edition. The existing learning platform will still be active for the 7th edition and for HealthStream accounts. To gain access to the 8th edition prior to December 31st, you'll need to contact RQI partners. Now let's move on and talk about RQI for NRP, which will be available in June of 2021 also. This is available for hospitals who already use the RQI system for their resuscitation education. RQI is a self-directed learning program that uses quarterly learning and skills sessions to help the learner retain knowledge of the algorithm and skills needed to provide positive pressure ventilation with a mask. If you're in a hospital that uses RQI for NRP and you already have a provider card, this is your track. This is how you'll proceed with RQI and maintain your NRP Essentials provider status. First, you study the textbook and complete the online learning assessment. Then you complete the tasks with the mannequin at the cart. After you successfully complete those tasks, you receive your e-credential as an Essentials provider. This verifies that you have demonstrated competence in high-quality PPV skills for the newborn. And then you enter the quarterly cycle of knowledge and skills activities. Those are on the bottom line there. And you can see that each quarter you have knowledge activities at the cart, and then you'll also have skills activities. And your e-credential is maintained. Oops, go back one to the new learners. This is the process for learners who are new to NRP and want to achieve NRP Essentials provider status. They study the textbook, they complete the online learning assessment, and they do the PPV and Mr. SOPA skills at the cart with the mannequin. But before these new NRP learners are finished, they're required to attend an instructor-led event where an instructor can reinforce or validate the learner's skills through lesson 4. That's followed by simulation and debriefing. After completing the instructor-led event, the learner receives the e-credential validating their competence at PPV skills for the newborn, and they also enter the quarterly cycle of knowledge and skills. There is an RQI advanced option for NRP facilities who use RQI, and details about that will be coming soon. Here's a look at some important dates to remember. Whoops, important dates. June 1st, 2021 is when NRP 8th edition launches, and that includes the new NRP learning platform for 8th edition. On December 31st, 2021, all NRP 7th edition courses must be finished, and that includes the NRP 7th edition instructor course. Because on January 1st, 2022, the NRP 8th edition materials are required for use, and 7th edition will no longer be available. That completes session 1, and I think we're going to go on to session 2 in just a minute.
Okay, I was muted. Sorry about that. Hi, I'm Chris D'Esposito from RQI Partners. RQI Partners is a partnership between the American Heart Association and Laerdal Medical. Our company is focused on delivering innovative resuscitation solutions that support our vision to eliminate preventable and unexpected cardiac arrest deaths. We have now partnered with the American Academy of Pediatrics to bring you both the new NRP learning platform and RQI for NRP. I'm pleased to welcome you to today's second session, Course Administration and Transition for the NRP 8th edition. Before we get started, I want to mention, due to the more than 7,000 registrants, we are not taking a live Q&A. Instead, we have set up a separate Q&A site where your answers will be posted along with other resources. Please take a moment to record this address, rqipartners.com/NRP-QA. For those who could not attend today, we are recording this session. The link to the recording will be posted on the YouTube channel you're viewing from the Q&A site. Additionally, you can find the link at aap.com/NRP. It's in the Instructor Toolkit, and at rqipartners.com/NRP. Now, let's get started with a discussion about instructor-led content.
Okay, there I am. Okay. Thank you, Chris. My name is Jeanette Zeichkin. I'm happy to be here today to take you through what instructors need to know about NRP 8th edition. I've been a consultant for the NRP Steering Committee since 1998, serve as editor of the NRP Instructor Toolkit, and associate editor of the textbook of neonatal resuscitation. Oh, this is session 2, and we have a lot of information to cover. You can see that by looking at this slide. And while most of these topics were covered in session 1, we're going to cover this information in more detail in this session. This presentation is being recorded in case you want to review the information later. So let's get started. Let's begin by reviewing a couple of things that will remain basically the same for NRP instructors. First, maintenance of your NRP instructor status. To maintain your instructor status, you'll teach or co-teach 2 provider courses during the 2-year renewal period. You'll review the instructor course content. You'll pass the NRP instructor exam, and you'll maintain your instructor toolkit access. Remember that once you become an instructor, you remain an instructor through future editions of NRP as long as you don't allow your instructor status to expire. If your instructor status expires, you must meet the 8th edition eligibility requirements and take the NRP instructor course again. These are the current instructor eligibility requirements, and they have not changed. An instructor candidate must be a physician, registered nurse or nurse practitioner, respiratory care practitioner, or a physician assistant with experience in the hospital care of newborns in the delivery room. The NRP instructor candidate must have current maternal child educational or clinical responsibility within a hospital setting, and it is recommended that NRP instructors and instructor candidates have ongoing delivery room experience. The NRP is designed for hospital birth, and the instructor requirements reflect that. We're very excited to launch a new instructor course in June, but the 7th edition instructor course will be available through 2021. If you choose to begin the 7th edition instructor course, you must be finished with all requirements by December 31st, 2021. If you don't finish all of the requirements by then, you must begin again with the NRP 8th edition course. This is the NRP 8th edition algorithm, and it incorporates only minor changes from the 7th edition algorithm. And don't worry, we'll see it bigger in just a second. The algorithm shown here appears in the textbook of neonatal resuscitation 8th edition and all the accompanying education materials. It differs from the algorithm in the American Heart Association guidelines documents just a little bit, but only in style and word choice. And we did that for educational efficiency, but it doesn't conflict with the published science. So let's look at the top top and the bottom halves, and let's see if we can see it more clearly. To prepare for the team briefing, the 4 pre-birth questions have changed. We still ask about gestational age, if the amniotic fluid is clear, and about additional risk factors, but we no longer ask how many babies are expected. We're going to replace that question with what is our umbilical cord management plan, and cover the risk factor of multiple births with the additional factors question, additional risk factors. The initial steps are the same, but we change the words to match to the common terminology that so many people use, which is warm, dry, and stim, followed by position the head and neck and suction the mouth and nose if needed. Do you see that vertical line on the left side of the algorithm that goes down and denotes the 1-minute timeline? It's been moved, the bottom of it has been moved to the top of the PPV rectangle to clarify that PPV should begin by 60 seconds after birth. But the pulse oximeter and the cardiac monitor application, if that's needed, can certainly follow that. Initiating PPV is always your priority. In the bottom half of the algorithm, you'll see that use of a cardiac monitor is now recommended at a point when an alternative airway is required instead of when cardiac compressions begin. Because our decisions are based on heart rate, it only makes sense to use the most accurate method for assessing heart rate when an ET tube or a laryngeal mask is required. And this is my favorite. You may have already heard about this one. The epinephrine, IV and IO, and endotracheal doses have been simplified for educational efficiency. It's a single dose, meaning that it's easier to recommend one dose than a range of doses. For IV IO epi, the recommended initial dose is 0.02 milligrams per kilogram, which is equal to 0.2 milliliters per kilo. The dosage range is unchanged, and the simplified doses do not represent an endorsement of any particular dose within the recommended dose range, and additional research is continuing. And you'll notice the change about considering cessation of resuscitation efforts at around 20 minutes after birth instead of after 10 minutes. You can read more about that change in the textbook when it comes out, and in the Busy People update that's posted on the NRP launch page. Now let's talk about the educational components of NRP 8th edition, starting with the 2 levels of NRP provider, which is NRP Essentials and NRP Advanced. As you may already know, the NRP Steering Committee made the decision to offer 2 course options so that NRP providers could excel in the course material most relevant to their role and hospital personnel resources. Each facility will determine who takes the NRP Essentials or NRP Advanced course. NRP Essentials is appropriate for anyone who's involved in care of the newborn, and NRP Advanced is appropriate for anyone who attends births and is responsible for resuscitation of the newborn, and NRP Advanced works for those who participate in neonatal resuscitation beyond positive pressure ventilation. Each organization will decide who should be an NRP Essentials provider and who should be NRP Advanced. We encourage the organizations to write this policy before your NRP 8th edition provider courses begin, or your learners won't know which course to sign up for. The decision about which category of provider to become is made by the independent learner if they're not associated with a hospital, or by the learner's employer. The AAP won't deter any NRP learner from taking either course option. If a healthcare professional is unsure about which NRP provider category to choose, they should probably choose NRP Advanced, and then they'll be ready for anything. So who will take NRP Essentials and who will take NRP Advanced at your institution? As I mentioned, we're encouraging organizations to write a policy before your NRP 8th edition provider courses begin. And remember that your hospital may have all NRP Advanced providers. This is because in hospitals where all perinatal and neonatal staff are expected to participate in a neonatal emergency, there may only be a few Essentials providers. Hospitals that use dedicated resuscitation teams may have more staffing resources and flexibility for including Essentials providers. Now let's talk about NRP Essentials. Everyone is responsible for the material in lessons 1 through 4, but the NRP Essentials learner is responsible only for that material, and that includes what you see on the screen: Foundations of Neonatal Resuscitation, Anticipating and Preparing, Initial Steps, and PPV. It also includes the material about CPAP administration, but your hospital can decide who is responsible for administering CPAP in the delivery room. NRP Essentials may study any additional lessons on their own, but the learner can't take an NRP exam on selected additional lessons. NRP Essentials means that the knowledge and skills are essential for every NRP provider. Every NRP provider should be able to perform initial steps, administer free flow oxygen, administer PPV and the corrective ventilation steps we know as Mr. SOPA, and insert a laryngeal mask if necessary. An NRP Essentials provider may attend a birth and be solely responsible for newborn care when there are no known perinatal or neonatal risk factors. A qualified team, of course, with full resuscitation skills should be immediately available for every birth. And my point here is that NRP Essentials does not mean NRP Basic or NRP Light. It's NRP Essentials, which means that the skills are valuable and essential for every NRP provider. The NRP Advanced Learner is responsible for materials in lessons 1 through 11. So the advanced provider covers the lessons through PPV, including laryngeal mask and CPAP, and the additional lessons that you see listed here. And those should look familiar to you as the rest of the textbook. The NRP 8th edition textbook includes these 3 supplemental lessons: Improving Resuscitation Team Performance, which talks about the choreography of codes, where people stand, and how to increase the efficiency using human factors and ergonomics. Resuscitation outside the delivery room, and bringing quality improvement to your resuscitation team. Any learner can study these lessons, but NRP does not test on this material. The NRP 8th edition instructor-led course offers 2 learning formats. The first format is called Sequential Practice and Evaluation. This format works for all NRP learners, but it's well suited to new learners and those who don't often use their delivery room resuscitation skills. In this format, the learner practices a skill with the instructor until little assistance is needed, then uses the skill in a short scenario. When the learner can lead their team in correct algorithm sequence and perform their role-relevant skills without coaching, they're ready to move on to the next skill. Each scenario builds on the knowledge and skills from the previous lessons. In this format, the instructor sees each learner build skills until all the skills can be used in algorithm sequence with correct technique. At that point, the learner has passed the skills component of NRP, and the team moves on to simulation and debriefing, where they focus on teamwork and communication. The second learning format is called Comprehensive Skills Test Format, or the more familiar term for this is testing out. Learners who resuscitate newborns frequently and are experts at resuscitation using either essentials or advanced skills may test out of the sequential practice and evaluation course by leading their team through at least one scenario that tests their knowledge of the algorithm sequence and correct technique for the required skills. For example, the essentials provider would lead their team through a PPV scenario, and an advanced provider would lead their team through at least one scenario that includes complex resuscitation skills. If the learner makes critical errors or needs coaching, the learner requires remediation. They may try again at some point, or should attend a course that uses sequential practice scenarios. Your hospital may not resuscitate babies frequently enough for teams of providers to have become experts. You're not required to offer the test out option. Learners may have more success testing out of essential skills than advanced skills, so that could be an option for testing out. And remember that learners who test out must still participate in simulation and debriefing. Now let's talk about how learners achieve NRP provider status at an instructor-led course. The 3 components of an instructor-led provider course remain the same. The cognitive components are the textbook and the online learning assessment. technical skills, which happen in the instructor-led portion, and the teamwork and communication component, which happens at simulation and debriefing. The NRP 8th edition includes no eSIM cases. All providers will complete the online learning assessment. This replaces the NRP exam for lessons 1 through 4, and I think you'll really enjoy this change. The online learning assessment is a new and innovative interactive learning experience that uses artificial intelligence to tailor the instruction to each person's current level of knowledge and their confidence with this knowledge. You sign in to take the online learning assessment, and if you rate yourself an expert and you answer questions correctly, you will not receive content unless you miss questions. If you are not an expert in lessons 1 through 4, you'll receive as much content as you need to answer each question correctly. People who know the content will finish the assessment quickly, and people who do not know the content or are not sure of the answers or miss questions will take longer to finish. Now let's go through how the Essentials learner, lessons 1 through 4, gets their Essentials card in an instructor-led course. The learner begins by reviewing the textbook lessons, then the learner completes the online learning assessment. Within 90 days of completing the assessment, the learner attends an instructor-led provider course, either using the sequential practice and evaluation format, or if the learner is an expert, they may opt to test out if your program offers the testing out option. After learners finish their skills assessment, they proceed to simulation and debriefing and receive their Essentials card, and the Essential Provider status is renewed every 2 years. That should look pretty familiar to you. The NRP Advanced learner follows the same course with one exception. After completing the online learning assessment, because that covers lessons 1 through 4, the NRP Advanced learners are required to take a 35-question multiple choice exam for lessons 5 through 11. Then within 90 days, the learner attends the instructor-led course with simulation and debriefing and achieves NRP Advanced Provider status, which needs to be renewed every 2 years. On June 1st, the new NRP learning platform will launch for the 8th edition. The existing learning platform will still be active for the 7th edition and for HealthStream accounts. To gain access to the 8th edition content prior to December 31st, you'll need to purchase licenses from RQI partners. Purchase details are forthcoming, and I believe today's 3rd session will cover some of this. RQI for NRP will be available in June 2021. For hospitals who already use the RQI system, this will seem familiar and comfortable for most people. RQI is a self-directed learning program that uses quarterly learning and skills sessions to help the learner retain knowledge of the algorithm and skills needed to provide positive pressure ventilation with a face mask. If you're in a hospital that uses RQI for NRP, you already have a provider card. This is how you'll proceed with RQI and maintain your NRP Essentials provider status. First, you'll study the textbook and complete the online learning assessment. Then you'll complete the tasks with the mannequin at the cart. After you successfully complete those tasks, you receive your e-credential as an Essentials provider. This verifies that you have demonstrated competence in high-level or high-quality PPV skills for the newborn, and at that point, you enter the quarterly cycle of knowledge and skills activities. This is the process for learners who are new to NRP and want to achieve NRP Essentials provider status. They study the textbook, complete the online learning assessment, and do the PPV and Mr. SOPA skills at the cart with the mannequin. But before these new NRP learners are finished, they need to meet with an instructor and go to an instructor-led event where an instructor can reinforce or validate the learner's skills through lesson 4. That's followed by simulation and debriefing. After completing the instructor-led event, the learner receives the e-credential validating their competence at PPV skills for the newborn, and they enter the quarterly cycle of knowledge and skills. And you can see on the bottom line there that every quarter you'll go to the cart and complete a cognitive activity. You'll practice PPV at the cart, and then your RQI for NRP Essentials e-credential is maintained in this way. There is an advanced RQI for NRP facilities, and details on that will be coming soon. Let's switch gears now and talk about strategies for making the transition from NRP 7th edition to NRP 8th edition. Your hospital may start using NRP 8th edition course materials when they launch, or continue to use the NRP 7th edition materials through 2021. NRP 8th edition practice changes and the course materials must be in use by January 1st, 2022. So this is a question I've gotten quite often in the last couple of months. Does everyone take an NRP 8th edition provider course before you can implement the changes? And the answer to that is no. Not all providers need to attend an 8th edition course by January 1st, 2022, or before you begin 8th edition NRP. Providers can maintain their current renewal date unless your hospital chooses to require an NRP 8th edition course for everyone before implementation. Current NRP instructors do not need to take an NRP 8th edition provider course before teaching NRP 8th edition, but of course, you're strongly encouraged to review the new 8th edition instructor course content before teaching 8th edition courses. To make a smooth transition, your NRP providers need to know what they need to know. This is the information you might want to include. Which NRP provider category they're expected to achieve, how they'll learn about the NRP 8th edition practice changes, when these NRP 8th edition changes will be implemented in the delivery room, during provider courses, and in the NRP learning platform, and how NRP provider courses may change and how learners will be oriented to those changes. Here are a few ways to help prepare your NRP learners for 8th edition. Post materials that you can find on the NRP launch page, and there are always new material there. The instructor update newsletters of the last couple editions include information about NRP 8th edition, and there's also a Busy People update. The first one has been up for a while, and the second one will be coming soon. You can provide access to the recording of today's first webinar session for providers. You can email updates to your providers about NRP 8th edition or about hospital-specific changes. You can provide brief in-service sessions discussing 8th edition changes and how they impact resuscitation practice and education. Or if you're very ambitious, you can film your own short video of informational materials and post it for your providers. Set an implementation date. Implement NRP 8th edition provider course materials anytime after NRP 8th edition materials are available. Then announce your go live date. But before you do that, make sure that systems are in place to support the changes. For example, the policy for who attends births if you're using essentials and advanced providers. You also might want to include things like putting the pre-calculated medication table with the simplified epinephrine doses in the medication drawer of the neonatal code cart. And that pre-calculated medication dose table will be coming out with the new 8th edition materials. If you continue to teach NRP 7th edition provider courses, lessons 1 through 11, and simultaneously implement NRP 8th edition changes in the delivery room, you'll need to teach a hybrid course. NRP 7th edition learners will need a summary of NRP 8th edition practice revisions, and if they're being used in the delivery room, it's a good idea to use these new practice revisions during skills review and during simulation and debriefing. And if you recall, there aren't that many practice changes, so this should be easily accomplished. On June 1st, a new primary LMS will be used for 8th edition instructor-led courses. While HealthStream administrators and students using the HealthStream Learning Center will have access to the 8th edition through program integration with the HLC integration, instructor-specific functionality for 8th edition will only be available through the new NRP Learning Platform. You'll need to use the current LMS while you're still using 7th edition materials. Be sure to finish all your 7th edition courses by December 31st to ensure that you complete the course before it ceases. If you're not sure how to get to the new NRP Learning Platform, contact RQI Partners. There's more information coming in the next webinar session. Here's a look at some important dates to remember. On June 1st, 2021, the new NRP 8th edition launches. And on that same day, the new NRP learning platform for 8th edition will be available. On December 31st, 2021, all NRP 7th edition courses must be finished, and that includes instructor courses. And on January 1st, 2022, NRP 8th edition practices and materials are required for use. And as always, we'll keep you informed as the NRP 8th edition launch approaches. These resources are available to you and often include the answers to your NRP questions. But when you can't find the answer anywhere, send your question to lifesupport@aap.org. Thanks very much for listening. Now I'll turn it back over to Christy Esposito with RQI Partners.
Thank you, Jeanette. As we've seen today, there's been a tremendous effort put into developing the new content and platform for the NRP 8th edition. Our teams are now focusing our efforts on the operational aspects of the transition. We're also working very closely with our partners at HealthStream to ensure a smooth transition. Now, this does mean we don't have all the answers right now, but be assured there's more information to come as we get closer to these dates. I want to repeat some milestones and share the information we have so far for NRP instructor-led courses. We will have more information on RQI for NRP in the next session. On June 1st, the new NRP learning platform will be online along with the NRP 8th edition content. At this time, RQIP will begin sales of the 8th edition instructor-led courses. And I know you've heard it a couple times, but the next date is a very important one. While access to the NRP 7th edition will be maintained through December 31st, 2021, all NRP 7th edition course activities, including instructors, must be completed by the 31st. We switched to the 8th edition on the 1st for everybody. So that date at the end of this year is an important one to make sure nobody loses any incomplete progress. So let's get into a few questions. So one, what if my learners started the 7th edition and have not finished? Jeanette's mentioned June 1st, learners can continue the 7th edition and on the old platform and continue that to completion. Starting December 31st, 2021, learners must have completed all of those activities or else progress will be lost on the 1st. What if I've already purchased licenses? Unused licenses will convert to 8th edition content. We're working very closely with HealthStream to determine the process and timeline for this, so there's more information to come. But what if I want the NRP 8th edition content on June 1st? Simply go to rqipartners.com/NRP and you can request to be contacted for more information. Sales of the 8th edition licenses will not begin until June 1st, 2021, but at that time they will be available from RQI Partners. I am sure you've got plenty of other questions. So if you've got more, what do you do with them? As I mentioned earlier, add your questions to the Q&A website. Answers to those questions will be published there. Again, that's rqipartners.com/NRP-QA. For more information, you can also visit rqipartners.com/NRP and register to be contacted. And here's a big one. Watch for more information coming soon from RQIP and the AAP. As we approach these dates, we'll have plenty more to share. So in closing, I want to thank you all for joining us today. And again, be on the lookout as we share more information in the coming weeks and months. Thank you. Hello, I'm Christy Esposito from RQI Partners. RQI Partners is a partnership between the American Heart Association and Laerdal Medical. Our company is focused on delivering innovative resuscitation solutions that support our vision to eliminate preventable and unexpected cardiac arrest deaths. We have partnered with the American Academy of Pediatrics to bring you both the new NRP learning platform and RQI for NRP, which we're here to talk a little bit about today. Well, I'm so happy to be here with you, but I have to point out that I'm not who you might have expected to see today. I'm standing in for Dr. Vishal Kapadia, Russell Griffin, and Lauren Sanderson, who were meant to be a trio of original presenters. These three, who live in the Dallas area, have been without power for several days due to the severe weather in Texas. Thankfully, they're safe, but not able to access the internet to participate. Our thoughts and prayers go out to everyone who has been affected by this most recent weather event in Texas and across the US. Today, I will share the most pertinent information from their presentation with you in an abbreviated session. But please be aware we have scheduled a new date for this session with these three original presenters to be shared on March 11th from 10 to 11 a.m. Central Time. All of you who have registered will be contacted by email and invited again to the new date and time. In addition, the same information will be displayed on the AAP and RQI Partners websites. So let's get started. Before we jump into RQI, I want to announce, as in the previous session, due to the large number of registrants, we're unable to include a live Q&A. Instead, we've set up a separate Q&A site where you can submit questions, which will be posted as they are answered, and which we will keep live until the end of the year to provide ongoing support and visibility for everyone. Please take a moment to record this address, rqipartners.com/NRP-QA. We will record the session, but again, we will present the full program for this session on our rescheduled date of March 11th. The link to the recording will be posted on the sites you see here, the YouTube channel you're using right now, the Q&A site shown in the slide, and additionally on aap.com/NRP and rqipartners.com/NRP. Let's begin with an overview of the RQI for NRP program. Being a part of the RQI portfolio, the NRP experience exemplifies the quality improvement model that allows learners to achieve and maintain the level of mastery. This includes an adaptive entry point that is tailored for both novice and experienced learners, with the ability to validate or build a foundation of knowledge that is unique to each learner's current level of competency. Once all learners are validated, having an equal foundation of knowledge, they are then ready to move into the low-dose, high-frequency model of RQI, with continued opportunities of recall for both knowledge and skill, for greater memory consolidation and retention over time. The key concepts that this program will focus on are the first three blocks of the NRP algorithm, including positive pressure ventilation and the corrective steps of Mr. Sopa. Integrating these concepts with the improvement model of RQI will also allow providers to achieve verified competence in both knowledge and skill for the essential components of neonatal resuscitation. We'll now move into what learners will experience for this to happen. I do want to preface that the RQI learner journey being described here is to provide learners with the essentials of neonatal resuscitation and is meant to serve as a foundation for NRP. For those learners requiring an advanced level of curricula or who are expected to participate in newborn resuscitation beyond PPV, an advanced endorsement of this course is available to complement learners already enrolled in the RQI for NRP program. For the essential curricula, learners will begin with an enrollment of either a prep or entry assignment based on their current level of knowledge. Admins will make the selection for learners, typically determined by a provider's experience or current holding of an NRP card. For example, knowledge learners, or those that currently do not have an NRP card, would be assigned prep to build a foundation of knowledge. This includes an adaptive learning course, a baseline skills check without feedback to assess a learner's current level of PPV skills, a skills assessment with feedback that learners must pass, a Mr. SOPA activity that includes practice at the cart, and a simulation and debriefing session that is instructor-led. Entry-assigned learners, or those that currently have an NRP card, will go through similar requirements to validate their existing level of knowledge and skill without the assigned instructor-led simulation and debrief. I would like to note that even though the Adaptive Learning online course is assigned in both, it will provide a unique experience for the learners depending on their expertise. This is something we'll discuss in the next slides. After learners complete the prep or entry assignments, they are provided an RQI e-credential that will now be maintained with the completion of quarterly assignments, the RQI low-dose high-frequency model. This includes learners being required to demonstrate PPV skills on a newborn at the RQI simulation station every quarter via the skills assessment with feedback and a cognitive assessment to apply the NRP algorithm in a scenario-based activity. Passing is required for all quarterly assignments to verify learner competence. A baseline assessment without feedback will be required by learners every fourth quarter or on an annual basis to capture their maintenance of PPV skills competence over time. In addition to a teamwork event at the simulation station that will need to be completed every 2 years. In efforts to tailor this experience for learners and the needs of each institution, we will also be offering the option for learners to complete an all skills-based activity with the device most commonly used in their setting. This includes the T-piece resuscitator only, the self-inflating bag only, or both the T-piece and self-inflating bag. Now let's go a little more in depth into the adaptive learning course that I mentioned in both the prep and entry assignments for RQI for NRP learners. This adaptive experience is one of our most significant advancements that helps us achieve educational efficiency with both novice and experienced learners. This is accomplished with the use of an advanced adaptive algorithm, which will power the true adaptive learning experience that is now seen in the entire RQI portfolio, including hardcode. This is being accomplished via an exciting new collaboration with Area 9 Lyceum, a global leader in adaptive learning design. With the use of an adaptive algorithm, we are able to provide learners the education that they need on an individual level by using artificial intelligence to deliver an efficient learning experience that is personalized instruction tailored to each individual knowledge and confidence level for every learning objective of the Essentials curricula. This experience then adjusts in real time based on each learner's competence and performance. The adaptive experience supports quality improvement by allowing a faster knowledge acquisition for those needing it and a maintenance of mastery for those that are already experienced in the essential concepts of neonatal resuscitation. Thus, a mastery learning model for all NRP providers. We've incorporated the most advanced tenets of educational efficiency and mastery learning into this program. And now I'd like to share some key dates around RQI for NRP availability for you. Starting now, RQI partners will be able to provide quotes and take orders for RQI for NRP. Starting May 1st, RQI partners will begin the implementation process based on orders placed. And finally, on June 1st, RQI for NRP Essentials and RQI for NRP Advanced Endorsement will go live. Existing RQI customers can contact their impact manager for more information on this. If you are not a current RQI customer, please visit rqipartners.com/NRP to request information. And of course, existing customers are also free to check out that website. While Dr. Vishal Kapadia led a beta site for RQI for NRP at Parkland Hospital, since he couldn't make it, we have a short video that captured Parkland Memorial's experience.
RQI for NRP has a lot of untapped potential.
I feel like I get a lot more personal attention this way than I ever did in the classroom setting.
Our institution was part of the beta testing for the RQI platform. Positive pressure ventilation is very important life skill in neonatal resuscitation. about 3 to 6% of babies born require positive pressure ventilation. Globally, about 700,000 babies die due to birth asphyxia. So we believe positive pressure ventilation is the most important life skill in neonatal resuscitation program. How do we achieve mastery over this face mask ventilation skill, which we know is the most important life skill in neonatal resuscitation? And that's where RQI comes in.
One of the systematic reviews that was done at ILCOR was to look at how we educate people in resuscitation. And that review showed that we really need shorter training intervals in between the times that we do our education.
Current teaching method traditionally requires an NRP provider to go to an instructor, practice the face mask ventilation skill every 2 years, which I feel is way too long.
NRP has been trying to incorporate these newer strategies that we could use. And one of them that we have come up with is to try to practice skills on a frequent basis. And that led to our working with RQI on a strategy that we could do for neonatal resuscitation.
One of the things I'm very excited about the RQI for NRP platform is that it will provide us data on how our providers are doing across the entire country with the PPV skills. That data, that feedback, an educator like me or resuscitation experts can take that data and then can use it to make guidelines in a way that implementation of those guidelines will result into better PPV skills, better outcome.
We're starting with that critical skill of positive pressure ventilation, but we imagine that we will be able to also expand that to working on skills like cardiac compressions. So there's just this unmet potential, I think, there that we will get to.
Some of our nursing providers, even the novice providers who have never gone through the RQI or NRP program before, they love it. They feel that this is the type of feedback that can help them get to where they need to be.
A lot of people that I work with who have done this program have really enjoyed it. And I think they realize, they walk into the office and they say, my PPV wasn't as adequate as I thought it was before. So, and they went back and they would try it again and they're like, all right, I got this percentage compared to this percentage. So it's very nice to know instantly if you're ventilating right. So, and I think everybody that has walked in that room that has tried this program has come back saying that same thing.
Our hope is that as more hospitals are utilizing RQI for their learners to continually practice their resuscitation skills, that we will see an impact on improved outcomes in newborns who start out needing resuscitation.
My favorite thing about this program is the immediate feedback that I get.
Having self-directed learning, having this high-frequency, low-dose learning allows them to achieve not only the competence, but confidence.
We're so honored to have Parkland Hospital as one of our RQI for NRP beta sites. We are grateful to Dr. Kapadia and Dr. Wyckoff for the 30+ neonatal providers who participated. We're equally excited to have Parkland Hospital as a member of the RQI community. This community represents our commitment to ensuring that your organization is fully capable to excel with the implementation of our RQI programs. You automatically become members with your enrollment in any RQI program, such as RQI for NRP. Participation in RQI for NRP program provides healthcare providers and organizations a complete end-to-end solution that includes learner and data management through the integration with learning management and human resource information management systems, a team of personnel and resources to support the initial setup and activation of the program. Community members also receive the support from dedicated impact managers who work with organizations for overall success, and peer-to-peer and affinity networking through our online resuscitation user net, the RUN Online. We are also able to provide RQI community members utilizing RQI programs, including RQI for NRP, immediate access to program updates and science changes from the AAP and AHA. You are all members of a community focused on resuscitation quality and improving patient outcomes, ultimately saving more lives every year. And of course, saving more newborn lives is the primary intention and the ultimate goal of our collaboration with the AAP. Drawing upon science from the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Heart Association's leadership in resuscitation education, and Laerdal Medical's deep expertise in neonatal simulation solutions, the joint efforts of our two organizations will be central to improving the efficacy of neonatal resuscitation, education, and training around the world. On behalf of the AAP and RQI partners and all of our presenters, especially the ones that couldn't make it today, I want to thank all of you, all of the healthcare heroes who have joined us today during what I know is such a busy time. We're so grateful for your efforts every day. Check your mail for your invitation to the rescheduled session, which will now be held on Thursday, March 11th from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Central Time. And please join back.